Hey, everybody, welcome to the newest episode of Ambush on Air. I'm your host, Sam Bush, and I am so excited to be here today to talk a little bit about Gen Z and Millennial in the workplace. A little background on me for those of you who don't know me yet. I am a B2B marketing leader, and I am focused on partnerships and demand generation and content strategy within the Microsoft channel. Started this podcast really to talk about ways we can disrupt marketing and ways that our newer generations are coming in and really changing the game when it comes to modern sales and marketing. So excited to have my friend Jacob here on the call today. Before I do that, I will let you know for the purpose of this call, I am your token millennial on the call. I am 36 years old, born in 1988, and I am basically everything you think about when you think of a millennial. I hit the box on prioritizing experiences over really anything else. So that's a little bit about me, and it will play into our conversation later. So Jacob, let's go ahead and go through a little intro.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So my name is Jacob Pepper. I'm a business development specialist here at Fidesic. We're an ISV in the Microsoft space. I've been in my role for a little bit over a year. I graduated college at Michigan State in 2023. So I probably I would say very representative of Gen Z. I'm 23. I graduated college or not college. I graduated high school in 2019, right before the pandemic. Had about 7 months of normal school before the pandemic. So I
Yeah.
really had to get used to just the professional landscape of just post COVID. We're on Zoom now, we're on Teams, we're on Slack, we're doing all the things, we're on LinkedIn. So
Yep.
just all the different social media platforms, and just trying to just adjust that as I enter my professional career. So
Yeah, and something you and I've talked about as we were kind of prepping for this is that idea of kind of walking into someone's office and asking a question, or hearing it over the cubicle. So like your training is so different as well because you're all in this virtual ecosystem. So tell me a little bit about how that was for you.
yeah, absolutely. So in my work experience, I've had both in person and mostly virtual experiences. But in this most current role, I started virtually as an intern. We're a virtual company, so I've been working virtually for about a year and some change, as I said, and it's just been a kind of an adjustment, just in terms of just
Mhm.
compared to the in person stuff that I've done, just because just learning how to use Teams correctly, and just talk to people on there, and just I guess in the same way that you would pick up social cues just in an office, just from around other people in the cubicles. It's there are different social cues for the internet, so it's just oh, I can send you 5 Teams messages in a row and I'm not bothering you, even if you don't respond. So it's just learning just the ways that just people just interact has been a little different, I would say. So
Yeah, and I think for me, like my whole work career up until COVID was in person. And I struggled moving from I'm a huge extrovert, as anybody who knows me knows. I struggled going from that to going to Slack to ask my questions, going to I onboarded for a company that I worked at recently, all virtually. And I have to tell you, I was bored out of my mind because it was just videos. And I love a nice short video, but to train me on a whole company with just videos didn't work for my work style. I needed that in-person interaction that I then got because I had to ask, right? But I think that's
absolutely.
been like the change in technology as kind of our generations have come into work, and all that has been an interesting telling story, especially given the COVID pandemic, right?
Yeah, in the same way that I feel the 2008 recession was the millennial big event, I would say
Yes.
that Gen Z's big event was probably just COVID, and the post-COVID landscape of just how
Totally.
that shapes things. So
Mm-hmm. Something else I find really interesting about millennials versus Gen Z, specifically in the workplace, is collaboration. I know you did a lot of research around this. Millennials love to collaborate. We love to bounce ideas off other people. Even if we're introverts, we still need that camaraderie that comes with working on a project together. Even if we do it in a silo, we still want to have those moments where we win or lose together in work.
yeah,
And that, as just our generation moving from that constant in person, reach over the cubicle and get something signed off on, that went away with COVID. And we came into this virtual universe where if I need something and you're busy, I don't know that you're busy because I can't see you. Um,
absolutely.
so different than than kind of what we were used to and how that happened.
Yeah, it's a lot different. I would say that like Gen Z, just like speaking in like a generalization, I would say that like COVID really affected like our socialization skills and the way
Yeah.
that just like we like engage with other people. I don't want to say that like, oh, we're less like social than like other generations, because that's very much like not the case. But I would
Yep.
say probably just like we've learned like what we can do independently, and especially like if you like know your strong suits, if you like know what you're good at, it's like I feel like we kind of like a more like hands off approach when it comes to like management. It's just like if I'm doing my deliverables, if I'm just like meeting your expectations and like exceeding them, it's just like it's more of just like you don't really need to know like I guess like how my day is like structured, or just like if it's structured in a way that
Exactly.
like works for me, and it's like more of just like the independence piece, but also just having people around like on Slack, or just like I can like reach out
Yeah.
like if I like need them, or like even just like going to conferences like where like we had met. So it's just like I do still crave the in-person interactions, but it's just more of like we're Zoomers. It's just we can do it on the computer. It's like it's just yeah, less
Exactly.
human to human interactions, I would say.
And that comes back to like you guys growing up with a phone in your hand, with an iPad in front of you. You always had access to that digital communication. Whereas we, growing up, were outside playing with the grass, you know? um,
Absolutely, yeah.
Again, generalizations, right? But that's been interesting. So one thing that you said that stuck out to me, and something I want to hit on is this year, 2024, is the first year that we have an equal number of baby boomers to Zoomers in the workplace, which I think is catastrophically crazy. I think next year we're going to see some real high impacts on how that affects both generations in work. But right now, I think there, at least some of the baby boomers I know in my work life, are super disrupted by Gen Z. They're not sure what they're doing at the top to meet you. I know when I started working as a millennial, the cool thing was to have ping pong in your office and like make it like a place you want to hang out and whatever. And that works really well for us because we're so community driven as millennials. But for you guys, how does a baby boomer managing a business communicate and work well with a Gen Z?
I would say it really just depends on like the company settings. So like in person versus
Mhm.
virtual. I would say that just like as a generalization, a lot of like
Yeah,
baby boomers and like older Gen X like maybe struggle with just like the all virtual format, or like
yeah,
maybe they rely on the younger like millennials or like Gen Z to kind of like help them with their technological needs when like they like need them, or just like oh like I have like a quick question, and then there's that like oh like the reach over the cubicle. It's like how do you turn this into a PDF, like those type questions
oh
where
my
it's
gosh.
just like I I've answered so many of them, and it's just like, and I'm glad to help, but it's just more of just like learning how to just like, I guess, ask your like how to present that in a way. So like if it was virtual, it's just like how would you ask someone how to turn a PDF like over Slack? It's just like I need to see your screen. It's like it's helpful to like be in person, but I think that like
Mhm.
they maybe like rely on us for like those like technological needs, but also it's just more of just like that's just how they're like used to communicating. And quite frankly, just from a Gen Z perspective, if I was getting close to retirement, I don't know like how apt to like change I would be, just because it's just
Right?
like just counting the time. It's like I'm only gonna be here for like 3 more years. Like what's Slack? Like I don't like. So it's
Yeah,
just
that's
I
such a
so
key.
I it's just a mindset thing to where it's like I'm like early in my generation. It's like it bodes well for me to learn and excel at those things rather
Yeah,
than just ignore them. So
yeah. I love that you said the Slack. So one of my favorite things when I start working either with new people or a new organization is I always figure out someone's learning or their communication style early on. In my last role, I had a VP who I worked super closely with constantly, and he would never check his Slack ever. And he'd be like, I don't need it. Why would I use Slack? I have email. And I'm like, well, everyone else in this organization uses Slack, but you don't want to. I finally meet him in person. He tells me about his children who are older than me, and I'm like, okay, so he's a boomer. Like he that's just what
yeah.
kind of in that mindset. That's like it is what it is, and I'm not changing. But I think those can be really difficult working experiences for people like us who are like craving, things that make us show up and things that make us feel like wanted and needed in the workplace. Um, so
That's definitely a good perspective, yeah, because it's just I wouldn't think it's just like, well, I'm pretty sure Slack can turn your messages to emails. It's just like maybe just do
exactly.
that. Like maybe
Exactly. And like I think there's such a big need to decide like do you want to work well together with this person? If you do, as the millennial, when the boomer doesn't give, do I give? Um, it makes me more agile if I can learn to kind of mold and work in these different working styles. But it's kind of exhausting.
It kind of is, and especially as like a more entry level professional, it's just like am willing to be more agile and adept because
Yeah,
I'm not calling the shots and like telling people like what to do. So it's just like, and that's how like it works in your organization. It just bodes well for me to be adaptable, I guess.
exactly. Exactly. I think that's the big key that's cross generation adaptability and agility. Like in modern B2B work, you've got to be agile or your rigidity and your micromanaging is not going to work out. You
For
said something
real.
earlier that made me laugh because you mentioned how you don't want your boss up in your business on every detail you've got going on during the day. Neither do I, right? As millennial, we don't either, but we oftentimes get that from other millennials because they think that's what's expected of them because of their boss prior, right? So
Yeah.
our learned behaviors that generationally we need to kind of cut. There's a laundry list of those, but I'll save that for another
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say just in terms of like speaking on the differences of millennials versus like Gen Z, I know that like work-life balance comes up a lot for like millennials. I would say that like maybe my work life is less balanced, but it's like since I can work virtually, since a lot of like stuff in like sales and marketing can be like automated or just I'm not saying just send like automated emails, but it's just like it's like
yeah,
I can be at 3 a.m. scheduling emails or I can like schedule a LinkedIn campaign or like I
yeah,
can like do these things to where it's just like that doesn't necessarily like as long as I'm like attending my meetings and like responding to people like during business hours, it's just like I guess it's more flexible to where it's just like if I have free time, it's like I can go to the gym during the day if I want, or like it's not a big
yeah,
issue for my boss. And it's just like, but
yeah.
also the balance piece of
And
it,
your boss
I'm
is
more willing to
millennial,
work at,
right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
like, yeah, they are. They're older millennials, yeah. But I guess I would say the balance piece comes in. It's just like working in the evening or like working on
Yeah.
weekends. It's like I don't really care. Like I'll work at like off times, but it's just more of just like during the day. It's like I'll be available, but like yeah,
Yeah, see, and that's the thing that's been so interesting is in my career, it was like you work 9 to 5, maybe 8 to 5:30, and your butt's in that seat all day long until that time clicks and you're the first one on the staircase going down, but you're there the whole time. So even during COVID, I was struggling to get away from my desk because I was so used to this like grind
yeah,
of hustle culture that millennials basically coined. And we hate ourselves for it now. We look back and we're like, why did we work that hard? You know? But we were early COVID as a generation, like eating lunch at our desks still and like only letting our dog out twice a day until we kind of hit this plateau of exhaustion where it was like the world is going crazy. I'm still trying to get deals coming through the pipeline for us, even though the economy is trash. Like I still feel responsible for all of that, plus my mental health, plus my time. So it was like we had to teach ourselves how to have balance for the first time ever because we
absolutely.
weren't allowed to have it before. Or if you were, it was like, oh, they're a VP, like they're allowed to do whatever they want. But now I'm like, I'll take a call in the morning. I might go walk my dog for an hour. I might, but I've also, I'll let you talk in a second. I feel like I'm talking a lot. I've also
No,
had
you're
a
good.
millennial boss who micromanaged, right? Who wanted to know what I was doing. It's so interesting how the people who manage you before you manage others shapes the way you work. Um,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, I know. My like,
Yeah.
I've just had a very variety of them, but it's been fun. So let's shift a little bit into maybe let's talk about your thoughts on social media as a Gen Z, and I'll give mine on millennial for B2B business. I do a lot of speaking sessions around marketing to generations, like I mentioned, and something that always comes up that I don't talk about is TikTok. What are your thoughts on B2B TikTok for your generation or any?
Yeah, okay. So I think that I have a kind of jaded perspective. So like as a
Huh?
23-year-old like Gen Z person, I was 13 or 14 when the best version of every social media app was out. So I had original Instagram, like original face, like all before like they started making like all of those changes. So I
Yes.
guess to me it's like I remember TikTok as like musically and like I remember like musically as Vine. So it's just like it was a progression to get here. And now there's like TikTok shop and it's to where it's just like I would think that like if you're I guess like a B2C, like if you're selling like commercial products, like it makes
Yeah,
sense, I guess, in that
totally.
regard. But also there's something very Gen Z about like we know when we're being marketed to like quite aggressively. So it's just
Yeah.
like it's like some people like don't properly disclose ads, or like some people it's just like I don't like feeling like I'm being marketed to on social media where it's just like it's kind of like my like downtime. So it's just like
Agreed.
I think that like it depends on your industry, it depends on your business. If you're like I guess like more like fashion, like
Yep.
e-commerce, like probably like Instagram, TikTok. But I guess in terms of like the Microsoft space, like B2B, like I kind of wonder because it seems like short form video content is the move, but then it's like
But where
LinkedIn
do you
isn't
put it?
integrating that. And it's like, yeah, you don't really put it on TikTok and they don't really do well on LinkedIn. And I don't really see people in our industry doing the short form video content on like, I'm not sure if it's like a new feature on LinkedIn, but it's just like where you just like scroll and it's like the video section and it kind of just, it
Yeah.
looks like reels or like all of like
Yeah.
those like,
Yeah. Yeah.
different ones. So I would say that just like for the people who do it and do it well, it's like it's cool to see like or like someone like Sarah from Pareto, for example, is like a sales
Mhm.
leader who like uses like TikTok to like go live. I think for like in terms of like recruitment sales, like that works perfectly. But
Totally.
I would think like I haven't really cracked it, I guess, like for this type of industry and like for this because it's like we sell to like the partners, but like we also sell to like customers, and it's just like the customers, they're everyone's older than me, they're not on social media.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel you. I think that's something I find often as well. I think TikTok is a great place if you want to sell to a 30-year-old woman a specific product. That's your best place. Best.
Yeah,
But we're not doing that, right? So for me, LinkedIn has always been a really good driver of intent on like middle of funnel content is how I've always positioned it. In my previous role, we did a ton of thought leadership content on LinkedIn, and that was what drove any of our social media conversions. Um, Mainly like white papers and stuff, you know?
yeah.
It's like that education side. Um, but really we didn't see a good uptick in any other social media. I will say Twitter is an interesting one in the Microsoft channel. If you ever were a part of the Twitter boom, some people have been on it for 15 years or whatever. Every single Microsoft MVP has a Twitter, and I feel like a lot of people don't think to go over there, but they're all in there talking about things going on with releases or what they've been up to. And I think it's kind of a forgotten channel that like I use when I go to conferences to connect with people, meet up with people, and just let people know that I'm there or where I'm at. And that's been a really good success for me from like a networking perspective.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that, just because I
Mhm.
wouldn't really, I mean, just
Yeah.
considering like, and that's the thing with like social media, it's so volatile to where it's just like after like Elon Musk took over and it became like X now, it's like I
X.
was like, oh, like
I
people
won't call it X. Mm-mm.
like I thought I don't either. Like I still call it Twitter, but I guess I'm like
Yeah.
I kind of thought that like that was the professional exodus of Twitter or
I
like
thought so
yeah,
too.
whatever. So just like I didn't think that people still used it, but I'll have to check out some MVPs on there. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a fun one because there's a few like bar owners who do kind of some fun like what do you do this weekend kind of thing, and it's really engaging in the Microsoft space, and that's something that I always tell people and they're always shocked by. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it even makes me think too. I was just like, I know that like LinkedIn doesn't have that like same volatility, but it's just like even at my company, like we were like talking and just like we don't really want to put all of our eggs in like one basket with like LinkedIn, but like also at the same
Exactly.
time, it's like that's just it makes the most sense right now. So it's like I don't really know. Like
Yeah, yeah. And I think with LinkedIn and B2B, it's so much about testing that you can't just assume overnight that it's going to deliver something to you. And you can't
absolutely.
assume the one thing you're trying is going to work, right? It's a wild
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Wild time. Well, I know we have a couple other things we want to talk about. We could do them now or in a next episode around kind of our thoughts on legacy solutions and automation with kind of Gen Z. We can maybe touch on that now and then expand in a later episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So we come and we work in the Microsoft space, as we've mentioned a few times, but with that comes the legacy users of GP and then the new users of BC. Something that our friend Mary Miller, she hosts a session with me and my friend Kate Coffey around marketing to generations. And Mary has this nailed down on the parallels between Gen X and baby boomers and GP, and then millennials and Gen Z on BC. So I think that's one maybe we'll unpack, but would love just your quick thoughts on kind of how you see that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say it's really interesting now because I mean, as we've said in like several sessions, it's just like millennials like are like mostly like buying power now, like in their like organization. So if they're like acquiring like a new like ERP or a new like ISV to like add on to that ERP,
Yep.
it's usually the millennials buying now. But I've noticed that like it seems like even though they may be in buying decisions for like I guess, oh, like let's get like an add-on, it's like they might not necessarily be the decision maker to be like, oh, like let's upgrade our GP system like to BC, or like let's like
Exactly.
re-implement to like BC. So I think that it's kind of interesting. We have a lot of like millennials who like come to us and they'll be like in GP, and it's just like they don't aren't really in like a power space. So like, all right, like let's just like upgrade to like BC, like let's like fully like get this, but they still want to have like some of like the automation, like all of those like things that like help them. So
Exactly.
it's kind of nice to like help them like with like automation tools, but I definitely see like with the millennials and like definitely like Gen Z, it's just like the phasing out of like Dynamics
Yeah.
GP and like people like switching to BC. And I was even talking to my boss who's a millennial like around your age, Kevin, about this at the Community Summit Roadshow, and he said something that's just like GP's designed in a way that's just like not native to how you use the internet. So it's like you look
Yes.
at it and it's like, oh, this is an old Microsoft product like from the 2000s. So it's just
Yep.
like if you're like a millennial, it's like, oh, like this is how the internet looked like when I was first learning how to use it. And it's like
When
it's
I was on dial-up.
native in a way. So it's
Yeah.
like now it's like GP's like or not GP, BC, excuse me, is more of just like, oh, like the digitally native stuff. It kind of like makes more sense to me like when I use BC. So it's just like I think that as more millennials and Gen Z becomes the ones like, all right, like let's throw out this ERP, let's get a new one. It's like they'll
Yeah.
probably switch to BC, but I definitely still see like the success of like Microsoft like with our generation. It seems like compared to like NetSuite or like Intuit or like all those other ones, it's like we're definitely speaking of the Intuit layoffs, but anyhow,
Yeah.
neither here nor there. Anyway, but yeah, so that's kind of all I have to say about that. But
Yes. I love it. I'm trying to remember the exact number. I don't know if you remember. Microsoft posted the number of customers they had a couple days ago. I want to say
ooh,
I'll have to find it and add it in the show notes. But
I
it
had found, oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
yeah,
Go
but
ahead.
I had found it was like 47,000 companies are still on GP as of August of 2023, but I wasn't sure if there was a more updated statistic.
There is one about all of Microsoft ERP users. I
So
gotta find it.
F&O,
I'm going to
CRM.
Twitter because that's again where I find news from my MVPs. But
I
one
don't
of them
think
posted it, so
so.
I've got to find it. Here we go. Um, okay, so this is Business Central specifically. So think competitive with Acumatica and NetSuite and Sage Intact probably on the lower side or the higher side. 40,000 customers are in Business Central already, and that's only
Oh,
been
wow.
live a few years, right? Um,
Mhm.
so between that and then the number of GP customers that still exist, that's a huge network and a huge TAM of opportunity.
For real.
So crazy. I love this community. I love this whole road show that we get to go on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been trying to go to like more events this year. Like I recently went to a DG meetup in Madison, Wisconsin, met some of the Wisconsin people. Like that was really cool just to like learn what was going on like over there. So it's just
Yeah.
definitely trying to like, travel more and like make myself more like visible in the community and just meet more people. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, if I can impart any millennial wisdom that's helped me, it's that um, it takes just a little bit of effort for people to remember you if you do something memorable. So
yeah.
when y'all see me at conferences, y'all know who I am because I'm really making sure you do. And that is due to I had a mentor who took me to my very first conference in the Microsoft channel about 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and he pulled me and then the VP of Alliances aside and said, you guys need to be the last people at this party. Talk to every single person you can. Don't go home until it's over. And we're like, okay. And I'm like 25. I'm like, oh no, I don't want to stay out that long and talk to all these people. But it changed my life. It changed my life. Just by showing up, by being present, it forced me into a community that now takes such good care of me, which I love. So that's my
It's
advice.
incredible, yeah. And I think that like my boss Kevin has a very similar approach to conferences. He's just like, don't be my shadow, go away, like kind of vibe. So it's just it's
Yeah.
like I don't internalize it as a bad thing. It's more of just like I'm like, oh yeah, I can just like go and just like meet new people, and it's just like I really appreciate having, I guess, I'm very much an experiential learner, so it's just like
Yeah.
having to do, yeah, forge by fire, I guess.
I love that. I love that. Well, any final words before we wrap up today?
I don't have any final thoughts. Thank you again for having me on this podcast. I was very stoked to be here and to speak about all things like API automation, generations, just all the things. So thank
Yeah.
you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I will have you again. I know we have so many things to talk about.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
So as I kind of close out, I will say thanks for listening to another episode of Ambush on Air, coming to you bi-weekly, starting here shortly. This session is one that's near and dear to me, so you will see Jacob and I hopefully getting some approved speaking sessions in the future about what we are going to do together. So thanks again, and for those of you who followed me forever, I gotta say, party on. Let's go.